stumble to the kitchen, pour myself a cup of ambition and yawn and stretch and try to come to life. Jump in the shower and the blood starts pumping. Out on the streets, the traffic starts jumping with folks like me on the job from 9 to 5. Working 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. Barely getting by. It's all taking and no giving. They just use your mind and they never give you credit. It's enough to drive you crazy if you let it. 9 to 5 for service and devotion. You would think that I would deserve a fair promotion. Want to move ahead, but the boss won't seem to let me. I swear sometimes that man is out to get me. They let you dream just to watch him shatter. You're just a step on the boss man's ladder, but you got dreams he'll never take away.
Hello and welcome back to Office Hours Live. I'm live, you're live, and this is our opportunity to talk about what's been going on in this crazy election season, and it's not just the Trump phenomenon, it's nuts, and I want to talk about the Trump phenomenon with you. I'm going to talk actually about what's going on, the Trump meltdown. I've actually come to a decision about Trump I want to share with you. Also about the new authoritarian party. It's not a Republican party anymore. It's an authoritarian party. And the voting patterns, what we're learning about who is actually voting and who voted in the primaries. And I will then take your questions, okay? Oh, by the way, let me remind you, you can watch this anytime, obviously. I mean, hopefully you're now watching this. Share it with other people because there is something about being live, right? I mean, it's different. And also, push that little button if you haven't so you get notifications of when we're going to do this. All right? Okay? All right. Now, I made some notes to myself. August 2nd, 2016. This is just for your reference. But we've got a lot of Donald Trump. I started making notes about Trump in terms of, you know, he says he can't release his taxes because they're being audited. What? I mean, even Warren Buffett made that comment yesterday that, I mean, well, Buffett says his taxes are being audited. He made an offer to Trump that they could both go public with their taxes. There's no illegality about showing your taxes if they're being audited. And then Trump says the election is rigged, and he calls Hillary the devil, and he has this ongoing fight with an honored, you know, the parents of an honored Muslim American who gave his life for the country. I mean, what is going on with Donald Trump? The Russian-Putin connection, he wanted to hit this guy so hard, presumably Bloomberg, at the convention, that he'll cause him to be dizzy. Here's my insight. My insight is that, are you ready for this? My insight, that's Donald Trump, my insight is that he doesn't want to be president. I really believe he doesn't want to be president. Now, think about it. I mean, his entire adult life, what has he wanted? He wanted his brand to be built up so he made more money, and he wants attention. Those are the two driving forces of Donald Trump. He's already built his brand up. I mean, certainly he can monetize. Remember he was talking about monetizing his brand not long ago? And he's gotten all the attention he possibly ever wants. I mean, it's from here on, it's turning negative. I don't think he wants to debate Hillary Clinton. I think we are actually watching the implosion of Donald Trump. Now, granted, he's got a lot of supporters, which is actually the scary thing. We call him, in fact, President Obama called him during the Democratic Convention a homegrown demagogue. And I think the real issue here is not so much Donald Trump. I mean, obviously he's a big issue, but where the homegrown demagogue came from, and why there are so many people who are still supporting Donald Trump. Which gets me to the authoritarian party. And when I say the authoritarian party, I simply mean there's been a lot of polling of people who voted for Donald Trump in the Republican primaries. One third of Trump voters think that gays and lesbians should not be permitted in the United States. 20% of Trump voters, people who voted for Trump, think that Lincoln should not have freed the slaves. I mean, we're talking about a fringe group here in American society. Don't go thinking that this is a gigantic group of Americans. In fact, here's what we know. Only 9% of Americans actually even voted for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. 9% of Americans have voted in the primaries for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. So you get, this notion that we are facing a presidential primary. Here's Donald Trump. What do you think of my caricature of Donald Trump? Do you like it? I mean, it's not great, but there's no way of doing him. That's that silly little smile. And here's Hillary. And those are our presidential candidates. And 9% of Americans are responsible for these presidential candidates. Look, there's a lot to talk about. I want to take your questions, and why don't we turn to your questions right now? I can go back to the board, right, to illustrate some answers to your questions if you have them. Also, let us know if you like the board. I mean, I kind of like using the board over here. All right, we'll go to questions. Your questions. Maria Anderson, if, as you just posted, only 9% of Americans voted for Trump and Clinton, then there is a definite opportunity for a third party to win this election, right? Well, right now, Maria, it's very, very difficult for any third party. We have I want to say this so you understand everybody's on board. Well, you may not be on board, but we have a winner-take-all electoral system. That's what the founders basically gave us. And that means that it is extremely difficult for a third party to win a state, let alone win overall. Now, that doesn't mean we shouldn't be thinking about a third party. In fact, I don't want to take any chances that Donald Trump could possibly win this election. So in terms of my preference and my preference for you, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Obviously, you're going to do what you want to do, and you should do what you want to do. It's a free country. But my preference is that we don't even entertain the notion of a third party until right after the election, at which time we take Bernie Sanders' movement and we turn it into either a third party or a third force that is going to keep, hopefully, Hillary Clinton honest and keep the Democrats to their promise with regard to the platform and recruit and develop and field candidates, Democratic candidates for the Senate, for Congress, looking forward to the midterms of 2016 and 2020. Are you with me? All right, Kevin Cuff, I'd like to hear your insights on what has to happen so that a third-party candidate has a legitimate chance of winning an election. Well, Kevin, I think, again, going back to that same thing, if we start right after Election Day and we develop the infrastructure for a third party, there are third parties. I mean, the Green Party is a third party. There are other third parties. The Libertarian Party are third parties. I'm talking about taking Bernie's movement, using that momentum, using the email list, using not just the momentum and email list, but also the message, getting big money out of politics, reversing inequality, creating a democracy that works for most of us and is responsive to us so we can do a lot of other things. It's sort of the first step, and we can do that after the election. Rachel Brown, is there any hope for the Democratic National Committee? What's even the point? Rachel, I have to tell you, I don't think that there is much hope because the Democratic National Committee, just like the Republican National Committee, they're basically big fundraising machines. Now, I'm old enough to remember when the Democratic Party had local chapters and state chapters, and it really had much more to it than just fundraising. It actually had an organization, and that organization had the capacity to voice its ideas and voice them upward. Now it is basically rounding up money, and so is the Republican National Committee. I don't know if you saw, this is last week. I mean, I could hardly believe how much money and moneyed interests descended last week on Philadelphia. You know, Charlie Crist, a former governor of Florida who is now running for Congress, he was down in the Ritz Carlton Hotel in Philadelphia, and he was basically, because there was so much money there and so many lobbyists and so many big corporations and financial people and Wall Street people, he said, quote, he told the New York Times, "This is a good place to be." He said, as he glided through the Ritz-Carlton, quote, we must have set up 5 fundraisers today. This is the bank, unquote. Hello? Charlie Crist, where have you been for the last year? Do you not know what has happened? Do you not understand the anti-establishment, anti-big money movement? I mean, any Democratic politician who thinks this is back to business as usual has got to have their head examined. Charlie? Whoop, lost it, okay. Ahmed Zakar. Are you related to Jon Stewart? You kind of look like him. Okay, Milo Catch. Can Trump really refuse to do any debates with Hillary? Do you think it would help or hurt his chances? Yes, he can. He doesn't have to debate. There's nothing in the Constitution. There's no law that requires presidential debates. We assume it, just like we assume presidents, give their tax returns. I mean, this has been traditional. This has been part of our presidential campaign system. No law, no requirement. Donald Trump said, well, forget it. I'm not going to provide the public copies of my tax returns. He doesn't have to debate Hillary Clinton. And I think he may be afraid. He may be afraid. Donald Trump, let me say this publicly. You're a wimp. You're a loser. Okay, Milos Miledovich. How is that, Milos? I pronounced it right, didn't I? No? When people describe Trump's misdeeds, they sound like crimes in the minds of everyday Americans. Can his candidacy be used to demonstrate all that is wrong with our laws when someone can get away with all he's gotten away with? Milos, you're absolutely right. A lot of what Trump has done in terms of spreading money around, getting special benefits in terms of eminent domain to put up his huge casinos and his big buildings, escaping the kind of scrutiny that most people who are running for office escape from. Yes, that's exactly what we've got to understand. Now, Donald Trump may have violated laws along the way, we don't know, but much of what he has done is outrageous, and part of the outrage is that it is perfectly legal. John Besachov. John, why is it that all economists think trade is great for America, but only 35% of Americans agree? Well, John, actually we have an upcoming video about just this particular topic. But let me give you the shorthand version, is that most economists assume that anything that improves efficiency, the great God efficiency, is good, but define efficiency as some people being better off and nobody being worse off, which means that if trade makes some people better off and nobody worse off, then it is by definition efficient. But that leaves out the fact that the burdens of trade have been focused on people who used to have good, mostly unionized jobs, and the biggest beneficiaries of trade are already quite wealthy. So it's aggravating inequality, and it feels unfair to a lot of people. Eli Waters, what's the probability that they will try and get TPP, the Trans-Pacific partnership through during the lame duck session. Eli, that's exactly what they, that is the White House and the special trade, the U.S. Trade Representative, are certainly trying to do, and a lot of big corporations that have sponsored the TPP. They are looking at the lame duck session. They're looking at the session right after the election and before the inauguration of the next president, because in that way, no potential president, Hillary Clinton or even Donald Trump, can be responsible. You know, they both come out against the TPP, but if it's done during a lame duck session, it sort of gets through the sluice without anybody taking responsibility. That is a huge danger. Be vigilant. And I'm talking to all of you now. Be vigilant. The TPP, that Trans-Pacific Partnership, is a terrible agreement. It would make it much harder for the United States or any nation who is a signator on that agreement to improve health, safety, environmental standards, labor standards, or even standards to protect investors. Because any of those standards, if they were shown to reduce corporate profits, the nation, that is the United States or any other nation, would have to compensate the companies. Can you see how insidious this is? Bradley Stevens, what's the practical effect of the court decisions invalidating North Carolina and Wisconsin voting ID requirements? Bradley, it's a big, big deal, and they couldn't have come at a better time, and thank goodness they've come right now. Wisconsin and North Carolina are two swing states. They're very, very important, and by invalidating those voter ID requirements and a lot of other requirements that both those states, state legislatures, Republican state legislatures, put into effect, basically to suppress the votes of mostly black voters and Democrats, what that means is that a lot of people are going to be allowed to vote who otherwise would not. And most of those voters, again, are going to be Democratic voters. So in those swing states, it is truly a very big deal. Ann O'Brien, why do you think that we as a nation have not made Election Day a national holiday? Ann, you're absolutely right. Shall we make this a big deal? Shall we make this part of our crusade? I'm going to do a video about this, and then I would like you, I'll post it on Facebook, I'd like you to get it out. Our videos really are doing remarkably well. Let's try for 1 million people with those videos, and then let's have a petition, and let's try to make Election Day a national holiday. It should be a national holiday. You know, most other nations' election days are either on Sunday or they are on another day that people can easily vote. And even absentee voting is not really as good as having a day when everybody knows that that is their privilege and responsibility. Randy Hogan, since every topic seems to turn into Hillary did this and she did that, and she to beat Sanders, blah, blah, blah. That's what, Randy, that's what you're saying. Can we talk about football, Robert? No. Martha McClendon Lundy, can you just say my name on your show? It would make my day. By the way, you do look like Jon Stewart's brother. Okay, Christine Grant, I was just talking to my daughter about how surprised and horrified I was by Trump's success. Christine, you're not alone. I don't have a daughter, I have 2 sons. I was talking to them, and I talked to my granddaughter about it, and she is just as horrified. Now, your daughter said she believes that 8 years of a black president set the stage for this among closeted racists. Do you think this is true? Christine, I'm sure that there is some sort of a racist backlash going on in this country, but I think the backlash that's going on that supported Trump, remember what I said before, only 9% of Americans voted for Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. 9%. This is not like a big American parade here for either of them. But with regard to Donald Trump, there's also, let's not forget, the economy. We've got a lot of people who are anxious and frustrated and also scared. And when you've got people, middle class, working class people who are anxious, frustrated, and scared economically, that is fertile ground for demagogues. We have seen this historically. So yes, you have some racism, but that racism has always been in America, sadly. You have xenophobia, anti-foreignism, that's been in America too. What brings these out, what has made Donald Trump capable of generating the kind of following he has, which, let me remind you, is not as large as it may look at first glance, is these fundamental economic conditions. People are scared and they are upset and they want to blame somebody. Scapegoating is not new. Mia Bailey. I like to talk about how to reduce corruption in banking. Is regulation enough, or wouldn't it be better to have better law enforcement and punishment? Shouldn't they go to jail? Yes, Mia, the bankers should go to jail. There has been no major banker from any of the major banks, you know, Wall Street banks that has gone to jail, even now, for the carelessness and criminal negligence. It really is criminal negligence leading up to the 2008 bailout. But that's why you got to bust up the biggest banks. It's not just a matter of the Dodd-Frank law. I debated Barney Frank about this on television about a month ago, and he obviously is the author of one of the authors of the Dodd-Frank Act, which is supposed to regulate banking. He says, of course, that's enough. You don't need any more. Well, that's not enough. We've got to resurrect the Glass-Steagall Act, which is a 1930s piece of legislation that separated investment from commercial banking, and we've got to get rid of, bust up the biggest banks. Beverly Henderson, the black t-shirt is a good look. Thank you, Beverly, I appreciate it. Patricia Davis, if the minimum wage is increased to $15 an hour, what happens to employees working at the same place for 20 years? New hires will be making the same wages as they make, but I don't see companies giving their long-term employees a raise. Well, Patricia, they're not giving long-term employees a raise in any event. I mean, at least if you raise the minimum wage to $15, you'd have many, many more people that are doing better than they are doing now. I mean, all of the competitive pressures on American companies right now are to reduce wages. And this is a much deeper problem than just the issue of what we do to raise the minimum wage. We've got to expand the earned income tax credit. We've got to change even corporate law, give employees more of a voice in how corporations are run. Why should maximizing shareholder returns be the only goal of the large publicly held corporation? You tell me. What do you think? John Brewer, where can Bernie be most effective? John, I think Bernie should return to Congress, and if the Democrats in the Senate have any brains at all, and they understand that he won 22 states with, 13 million votes, they will give him a leadership position in the Senate. And hopefully the Democrats will get back the Senate. By the way, while we're talking about getting back the Senate, can I just give this to you? I mentioned this before. These are the Republican senators who are vulnerable. And if you are in any of these states, please work for the opponents. Some of these states have Democratic primaries, so we don't know exactly who the opponents are. But we've got Mark Kirk in Illinois. We've got Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire. We've got Rob Portman in Ohio, and Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, and Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, and Richard Burr in North Carolina. You know, some of them may be nice people, but we need to get the Senate back. So work against them. Work for their opponents. And by the way, Ron Johnson's opponent in Wisconsin, we already know, is Russ Feingold, a fine man. All right. Uncle Munkle? That is not your real name, is it? I just watched Hillary doing her best to parrot most of Bernie's platform in an attempt to win over supporters. What do you think are the chances that we will continue to hear these values discussed and supported in the weeks and months ahead? Well, Uncle Munkle, I think they're very good chances, particularly if the polls and the responses she's getting show that that's what Americans want to hear. And she knows she's got to win over Bernie voters. And right now, if polls are to be believed, about 2/3 of Bernie supporters are ready to support Hillary Clinton, but that's still a third who are not, and she's got to win them over. And I think that she will if she keeps on talking the language of Bernie Sanders. Diane Boulaurier, how can we stop the Democratic Party How can we get, the Democratic Party to stop taking progressives for granted and acting in such an arrogant manner? Well, Diane, there's no Democratic Party. You're saying, how can we get the Democratic Party? There's no there. You know, as Gertrude Stein once said about Oakland, California, there's no there. There's no Democratic Party. There's an apparatus, a big machine that is mainly a fundraising machine. Do you understand me? They're Democrats, registered Democrats, but there's no Democratic Party as such. So the arrogance you are referring to may be individual people who are Democrats, who may be taking Bernie supporters for granted, or maybe, you know, I get a lot of emails and I get a lot of mail on Facebook, and a lot of people, you know, even right now, Hillary supporters are angry with me every time I criticize anything to do with Hillary Clinton. They're saying that I'm helping Donald Trump. And a lot of Bernie supporters are angry with me because I'm now endorsing and supporting Hillary Clinton. But you know something? Don't worry about me. I have a very thick skin. The issue is this. Think sequentially. We can't have Donald Trump president. So objective number one, over the next 3 months, get Hillary into the White House. And then two, sequentially, we develop the movement that Bernie has already helped mobilize into, if not a third party, certainly a third force that has huge practical political power going into the midterms of 2018 and the presidential election of 2020. Bruce Payne, how much fun is Bill Maher's show? Well, yeah, it's fun. I mean, Bill Maher is great. And to be a guest on the show, I've enjoyed it a lot. It's more fun than being a guest on... I mean, I like to be on George Stephanopoulos' program, but it's not like Bill Maher. All right. Yeah, you know, you make... There's one thing I really should say about this. I think humor is the great disinfectant. In other words, when you get somebody to laugh, and you can laugh with them, even if they are conservative Republican, even if they have different beliefs than yours, it opens their minds up a little bit, and you can actually have a little bit of a relationship. One of my best friends in the world, now, you may object to him, and some things he's done I object to, but former Republican Senator Alan Simpson is one of my best friends. Why? Because we laugh a lot together. And that's enabled us to become really good friends. And we have a lot of disagreements, but it doesn't matter. We know each other in a way that is, I think, well, friendship. Please do me the favor. This week, I know that it's a big assignment class, but this week I'd like you, if you are a Democrat or a progressive or whatever on the left, I would like you to go out and meet and make, if not a friend, at least talk to somebody who is a conservative Republican. Can you do that? And then report back next week. See how you did. All right? That's your assignment. Okay, Carrie Lynn. I'd like to know your thoughts as to why the criminal corruption so visible during the Democratic primary is not being properly addressed by anyone. Well, Carrie, it is being addressed in the sense that a lot of people continue to investigate. There are many allegations out there. The Democratic National Committee knows that if it's going to have any chance of getting the kind of support it needs in the future, it's got to clean up its act, get rid of superdelegates, make sure that the primaries in the future are open. In terms of particular allegations of corruption, as in New York State, for example, I know there is an investigation going on, so we will find out. And we have two more questions, please. All right, Candace Langford, is that your name, Candace? How can a dove vote for a hawk like Hillary Rodham Clinton? Everyone has a right to their own priorities, but it seems like we might all be able to get on the world peace page. Well, Candace, yes, get on the world peace page, and if Hillary is elected, you know, put as much pressure as you can on her to do the right thing in your view with regard to foreign policy. But can we just be practical for a minute? we face right now a choice And that choice, given our winner-take-all electoral system, is either Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. Now, I know some of you don't want to say that. You say to yourself, well, I refuse to have to vote for the lesser of two evils. You can do whatever you want, but I implore you, do not do anything that improves the odds of Donald Trump, a megalomaniac, a bigot, a narcissist beyond belief, a xenophobe, from becoming the President of the United States. You will be endangered. I will be endangered. Your children, my children, all of us will be endangered if this man becomes president. Okay, last question. Rona Beitler, we all know you're a voracious nonfiction reader, but is there a fiction book that you've enjoyed reading many times over? Oh, that's a good question, Rona. I actually have enjoyed, I like a lot of fiction, but you know, I'm going to embarrass myself, but I got to tell you, I like the Hunger Games series. I do. I mean, I really, I can't help it, because, you know, it's sort of a metaphor for politics, unfortunately. Anyway, I told you that I would get back to the whiteboard. Can you follow me? Yes? All right. I want to just say, join me next week at this time, at this place. I want to thank wonderful Zoe Beck, who does a fabulous job, and Yael Bridge, who just had a birthday. So join me in congratulating Yael, and we'll see you next week at this time, at this place, for another live office hours. Bye.